First of all, thank you, Nezar. This is the second talk I've had the benefit of hearing in the last 48 hours, and I need just some time to go away and think about it all, but I only have 5 minutes as a respondent, so it's been a fascinating start to the day, and thank you, Nezar, for placing some of these ideas in my head and the collective consciousness to play on your words. A few key points that I'll take away from this talk, first of all, and then I'll just ask Nezar a couple of questions and maybe throw it out to the audience. Kate, that's okay? So, although we have an ever-pervasive social media out there, and I was saying to one of our grad students today, I officially have 37 Twitter followers as of yesterday, and she said, you better work on that. I thought that was actually a pretty good number. You know, it went up from 25. But we have this ever-pervasive social media, this constant bombardment of information and communication and technology. And yet, one of the first messages I take from Nezar's talk is that the built environment and the physical reality still matters. And that's good news for us in this room. We will not succumb, as Nezar, I believe, had said, we will not succumb or surrender to cyberspace. And Nezar gave a very good talk yesterday about the uprising of the Arab Spring in Tahrir Square. And he said, no one will hear the messages unless the people are in the street, physically in the street, in the square, being seen, being heard. You can have petitions and Facebook pages and Twitter accounts on in the background, but until 300,000 people march in the street, your message is not going to get across to those who need to hear it. And so, as I say, it's good news for us in this industry that the built environment still very much matters, and its design is critical. A second point, urbanism will continue to be vibrant. And there are lots of city makers, formal and informal, that contribute to this. And it's interesting that Nezar states that urbanism is an interesting location in which to observe global forces at the local level and how those struggles play out and how there can be some major issue overseas and yet we see something happening here in Sydney. And we saw a little bit of that start with the Occupy movement in 2011. And we weren't quite sure what the issue was to start with, but it very quickly grew to be a global movement. And it seemed to be leaderless at the beginning, but very quickly through social media, it probably gained some more formal administration and organization behind the scenes. And so there's that nice tension and interplay between the formal and the informal media and the physicality of being in place at a certain time to make a difference. But we all remember not those iconic Facebook images, but the tents in every square in major global cities about the Occupy movement. And so it reminds us again that the built environment and people in it is very important. Another major point I take from Nezar's talk is that globalization has intensified the process of delinking identity and place. Now that one, I might need more than 5 minutes to really pull apart and deconstruct. And for those of you who listened to Nezar's talk yesterday, he said he hates using the word identity because it's very complex. And so I may put you on notice, Nezar, at sometime during the day, I'm going to pin you down to a 50-word definition of identity, place identity and self-identity. And 15 words to describe how you might manage the concepts of self-identity and place identity and how that works. The other comments, a couple more, and then I'll just pose 2 or 3 questions to Nezar and to the group to get the discussion started. Human beings are interesting creatures. We like to be herd animals. It's a nice herd with us in front of us today. This is probably perhaps manifest differently over time. We've now got book clubs and latte sets and community associations, sporting teams. And even though we have this desire to be amongst others, we still fear the other. And as geographers over decades, we've been talking about the other as if they weren't one of us. And it still strikes me that we can be as collective in our very nature as we are, and yet still fear someone who's just slightly different from ourselves. And when that whole big concept hits the rubber hits the road for built environment professionals, how do we start to manage that? You know, it's fabulous to talk at this great theoretical level, and the academy gets the benefit of doing that. But if you're a manager of planning at the City of Sydney and you think, wow, these are big concepts, you know, place identity and globalization and collective consciousness, I just have a member of the community on the phone complaining about the DA about my neighbor's garage. You know, how do I manage those tensions and those different scales? And what does it mean for making livable cities, sustainable, livable cities? So we seek out authentic places is probably my last point before questions. We do seek out authentic places and traditions to experience a place. But I wonder if there are equally inauthentic places, and does that make them placeless? And does it matter if we experience something that's inauthentic? Does it really matter, as Nezar said, that more people have seen the Eiffel Tower in Las Vegas than the real Eiffel Tower? And does that really matter, or is someone still getting that experience of something different? It takes us out of our own body and in relation to the physical. And how place is less rooted in the moment and in exact place, and more mediated through media, information, and social media. And that's a challenge for the next generation as I look to our HDR students of how do we as planners and built environment professionals mediate place through in time, current reality time versus social media and into the future, which is the vast unknown. So let me leave you with a couple of questions for Nezar and maybe to throw out to the group. Is there any such thing, Nezar, as the authentic city? So if traditions are fleeting and contingent and ever-changing, can a global city manage tradition today? And maybe those are sort of the second ones. How do we manage tradition and authenticity in today's postmodern world? And the second one would it be, is it okay, is it okay that not everyone creates the built environment equally? And that was Nezar's last point, that not everyone shares in the equal power and ability to shape our environments in which we live. But is that okay?